Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And this week, we are watching Sword of the Valiant, a version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the 14th century Middle English epic poem. I suppose it's epic. That we are doing in part just because Arthuriana is one of my hobbies.
Yep.
And it was made in 1984.
Is that after Excalibur?
It is after Excalibur, which is like 81.
Yeah.
And it stars Sean Connery. And we picked it because we very recently saw The Green Knight, the recent film by David Lowery, starring Dev Patel, in the theaters, and I thoroughly loved it. And I have a feeling I will not love this. It's probably closer to the poem's plot, but I have a feeling it's not going to be anywhere near as interesting.
Think there's going to be dragon fighting?
I mean, there are allusions to things like dragon fighting in the poem that are just kind of glossed over in the poem because the poem's not really about all of his adventures along the way.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, but where are they going with this? Because the poem is unusual. Much like some of the more interesting Arthurian tales, like the story of Percival and the Grail. This is not so much about adventures as it is a meditation on life. In the case of the poem, it's a meditation on things like honor and loyalty, and it's a very interesting poem. It's a very unusual poem.
Are there paintings of...
Well, so it exists in one manuscript, and there are illustrations of the manuscript.
Right.
I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing any paintings by the Pre-Raphaelites or anyone doing Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. They usually stuck to like the Grail story, but or the Lady of Shalott, famously, multiple paintings of the Lady of Shalott in different parts of the poem. But no, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was not usually of interest to painters, which is surprising because it has some very striking imagery. The Green Knight himself comes in on, I guess, New Year's Day.
Christmas?
Well, see, that's the thing. I can't remember if it's on Christmas Day or New Year's Day, but here's the thing. They're like within a week of each other. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's literally the same thing. So it's the dead of winter, and he demands to come into Arthur's court, and he is entirely in green. His skin is green, his hair is green, everything about him is green, and he's carrying a big holly branch in his hand as he comes in to do the beheading game. And it's called the beheading game because it exists in a few other texts, not just Arthurian.
So wait, he doesn't have a big axe, or?
Oh no, he does.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, but the axe is kind of hanging there, like a sword. It's the holly branch he's holding in his hand as he comes in. It's a very striking image. And
what does that mean, that holly branch? Is
what does it mean? Oh, thanks, Dennis.
Did I just extend like the length of the podcast?
Well,
2
that's
hours?
Okay, exactly. That's the thing. This has been a subject of debate for I'd say 150 years, because it regained interest in the Middle Ages. It was kind of a forgotten poem for a long time because it only exists in one manuscript, and we're lucky that the manuscript survived. What this poem means is so many things. Where to begin? You could read it as the Green Knight is symbolic of nature. Is he a green man, which was a very popular motif? Although even then, I don't want to get into too many tangents about what does the Green Knight actually mean, at least not yet.
I have a quick story. So this story is about meeting you.
Oh, okay. This is relevant, actually. Yeah.
So, this is before we were dating. I met you, and we were both in a playwriting class. You were dating someone else, I think.
Yeah, no, I was.
And we were at a bar after the playwriting thing. It's not class, like a playwriting group.
Yeah,
something.
like we would workshop.
So
plays.
I liked you and stuff, but like, I just wanted to hang out and all. So you said like, oh, I'm into Arthurian, whatever. And I just took the one thing I knew, which was Lancelot is fake. He's a fictional character. And so I asked, like, is Lancelot a fictional character? It's, typical, like, I know he is, but whatever. So Mary proceeded to give me 12 different versions of maybe.
Well, because it depends on what you mean by a fictional character. I mean, yes, but at the same time, he is obviously an outgrowth of, like, you can make an argument that Lancelot is a version of the youthful unknown. He is perhaps like a version of Maponos, who is the Celtic divine son who was stolen when he was 3 nights old. See, if you go back and you read the actual like Lancelot Grail, sometimes called the Vulgate, which is, oh my gosh, a very long text, but it's what Mallory was basing his, oh my God, I'm doing it right now, aren't I?
So anyway, so that was going on for 2 hours pretty much. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be bored with this person.
Like, fiction is, when you say something is fictional, like, we have to figure out what that means. But anyway. Yes. So, yeah, this is, the story in and of itself is very much my bailiwick. And if you ask me, what does the Green Knight mean? I'm like, man, where to even begin? Gawain himself is a very complicated character, and there are a lot of different ballads about him. And he was always my favorite knight, even before I read Sir Gawain the Green Knight, because he's not perfect. He is, Lancelot is the best, like, he's the most skillful knight, and Guinevere, of course, falls in love with him. And
what about Galahad?
Well, no, Galahad sucks. He's boring. The whole point of Galahad is that he's perfect. Yeah, and so, of course, he's the one who gets to attain the Grail. He's boring. Percival, at least, is interesting because he screws up the first time he meets the Fisher King. So, like, Percival, at least, is interesting.
So Galahad is when you have a paladin in your party.
Yes.
Like, oh, jeez.
He's the worst. I don't like Galahad. He's boring. Again, the so-called Vulgate or Lancelot Grail text is interesting for a lot of reasons, but man, inventing Galahad is like the worst idea. God. So, but Gawain's always interesting because he's the most human seeming in a lot of ways, because he makes a lot of mistakes. And this poem is about him making mistakes. But...
So it would not surprise me if we do more talking before the movie than after, because this movie could be a turkey.
Oh, it looks like a turkey.
And the thing is that, like, I'm not upset about that because this is not my fault. This is your fault.
Hey.
You're bringing this to the table. This is not Metal Storm. This is a Johnny Dangerously. This isn't highly regarded by Dennis Ling.
That's true. If this is terrible, it is my fault we're watching this. It is my fault that we're enduring, our own test at the Green Chapel. Yeah, I don't have high hopes for this. Because it's not going to have the sheer weirdness of Excalibur, and it's not going to have the visual poetry of the Green Knight. And I never saw the 70s British version called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but I'm sure that's probably better than what we're going to watch.
Now, you have seen Dragon Slayer.
I have seen
Which
Dragon
is a very good movie.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Lady Hawk.
Yeah.
That's on our list.
Yep.
But I've seen Excalibur. We have Excalibur. Excalibur is a fascinating film. Love it. No, I'm not expecting anything good. And it's kind of a shame because, to have Sean Connery as the Green Knight is, kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think that's exciting.
I'm glad he's the Green Knight, not Arthur, because Arthur is kind of like a side character in this one.
Arthur is entirely a side character. And I've seen the movie where he plays Arthur, and it sucks. Yeah, First Night is not a good movie. Look, do you know who plays Lancelot in that?
No.
Richard Gere.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Oh,
no, it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
Ugh. So, having now trashed a whole bunch of other films, no. So, shall we go and watch Sword of the Valiant, which is a terrible name for this movie. Why did they call it that?
I don't know.
Like, nobody cares about Gawain's sword. In fact, the sword's irrelevant. It's the Green Knight has an axe.
I believe it's called Metal Storm, the Sword of the Valiant.
Yeah, it may as well be. All right. within the siege and the assault was ceased at Troy, the boars Britain and brent to brandes and asques, the talk that the trames of treason there wrought was what tried for his trickery the truest on earth. Hit what Ennius the screw this. Anyway,
You know what? I always knew that your podcast would go to this particular point.
Anyway, so that was
It was only a matter of time.
Yeah. We thought we were about movies. We thought we were about movies in the 80s that I've never seen. It turns out we were always going to get to the point where I tried to read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight in the original Middle English, with the original orthography, edited by J.R.R. Tolkien, published by Oxford at the Clarendon Press in, 1930.
That nerd.
Yeah. The ultimate.
Elves again.
Yes. And let me tell you, everything I just did, keep rolling your eyes because it's still better than what we just saw. That's not true. That's not fair. It's not that this is definitely not the worst movie we've seen.
Now I said, well, maybe it'll be closer to the Apple than it is to Metal Storm, and I was right.
Insofar as, surprise, we're back in canon group territory. Yes, brought to you by Golan Globus. This was Sword of the Valiant, The Legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Yes, the people who brought us the Apple, and other great pieces of art like Break Into Electric Boogaloo, and Alien from LA. They made this, and specifically I think because they liked Excalibur, and they thought, hey, we can do that, and guess what? They can't. I think just knowing that this is a canon movie should tell you something if you know anything about the canon group, which means it's not bad. It's trash. It's trash, but it's fun trash. But it's not fun enough, and that's the problem with this movie. Look, I will throw out the fact that it does not follow the poem much at all, which is fine because a lot of the poem is not action-oriented. So to throw in a whole bunch of extra adventures is actually not a bad thing.
It's what the Green Knight did.
Yeah, no, you have to. And in fact, the text itself alludes to he did a bunch of crazy stuff on his way to the chapel. And the poem doesn't get into it because the poem's not really about that.
Yeah.
But that's hard to make a film.
He met a rabbit that bit people's heads off. He needed a holy hand grenade.
There were parts of this that reminded me a lot of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but without enough humor. Not that there wasn't attempts at humor in this. That's what's frustrating about the film. There are snarky asides, and the guy playing Gawain is trying to have fun with it.
He's good.
He's fine. Okay, when I say he's fine, it's a little weird because I don't know how to feel about his performance as his voice is dubbed the entire time.
But I mean, so in terms of, say the Apple, say Xanadu, say Metal Storm, better than all those actors.
The actor is Miles O'Keefe.
And apparently the director had originally wanted Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
I don't know how that was. I don't know if that would have saved it, but...
No, but I mean, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miles O'Keefe, I don't know what people would know him for. I guess Thor, the Fighting Eagle. I believe he is...
Eagle?
He is Ator in question. This is the same time period. It's the same producers, the same people.
Yeah. Now, did you say that Stephen Weeks, the director, had something to do with the 1973 British version?
He did the original British version. He made his own film.
Huh.
Which I'm so curious as to what the first one was like. Why did you go and remake the same movie 10 years later?
Well, I imagine he thought he had a bigger budget. He's got Sean Connery. He has Peter Cushing. He has John Rhys Davies.
Yeah.
This cast is loaded.
That's what's sort of frustrating about this movie because it is a loaded cast that feels squandered.
Very squandered.
Yeah, and they do a really good job in terms of they are filming in Cornwall and Wales and France. Open vistas, coastal cliffs, and castles. They filmed inside actual castles. They filmed outside actual castles. It doesn't look bad. Now, the score... Oh my God.
It's bad.
It's terrible. It is the worst synthesized horns playing in the background. I have the same kind of horns on like the Casio keyboard that I got when I was 12. It sounds awful. In fact, you know what it sounds like? If you watch The Princess Bride, there are a few times where the score is not Mark Knopfler's guitar, but it's supposed to be like horns and stuff, and it's the same cheesy synth. But the difference, of course, is that in The Princess Bride, they use it sparingly, and it doesn't take over the entire movie, whereas this entire film, that's the only thing scoring it is these chintzy, synthesized horns. It's terrible.
Yeah, as I said, it sounds like a bad He-Man soundtrack, but also a good Doctor Who soundtrack.
Yes,
because there are good Doctor Who like medieval episodes that basically have the same score.
That's true.
But it's because it's Doctor Who, you put up with it because you
honestly, it is.
You can survive with that.
It actually looks and sounds like a really good Doctor Who from the 70s.
Yeah.
That's true. In fact, if only Tom Baker was cast in this, it would have been a perfect movie.
Because he would have been making fun of everything.
Exactly.
It makes it work.
Yes. So again, the cast, Sean Connery is the Green Knight, and he's great, actually. He has a certain maniacal charm as the Green Knight. You know, he strides into Arthur's hall and is like, yeah, I'm here to mess things up. And, he's smiling the whole time. He's really fun, but there's not a lot of him. Which, to be fair, there's not a lot of the Green Knight in the poem.
Apparently, he was working on Never Say Never Again at the same time, the movie.
That's a shame.
But he's the Green Knight. The Green Knight is really supposed to only be there in the beginning and the end.
Well,
so we got kind of more of him than we should have expected.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If you actually read the poem, a good chunk of the poem Gawain spends with Sir Bertilac, who is the lord of a castle near the Green Chapel, and Bertilac turns out to be the same as the Green Knight. And you could easily have a dual role thing, except that then Connery would not be played as prominently as the Green Knight. He would play more as Bertilac. But they don't even really get into the story of Sir Bertilac and his wife, which is the crux of the story. Because in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight...
They do kind of drop the ball there.
They completely drop the ball on what the poem's about. Okay, we will get to that. So, yes, Sean Connery is actually a lot of fun. I like his costume in this. He doesn't look green. He looks pretty bronze.
Yeah.
But
and he's got like sparkles all over him.
He's got sparkles all over him, and he's got this crazy gray fright wig.
Yeah.
But his costume, he's like partially it's armor, partially it's leaves. Like
I think you could see Holly in the.
You can see Holly like just sort of interlaced in everything he's wearing, and he has instead of like a helmet, he's got a crown that comes up in big green antlers.
Yeah.
So he's got this whole like pagan, like Cernunnos like thing going on where he is this wild god of the woods who's come into civilization to challenge people. And like that, when I saw that, I thought, oh yeah, okay, so this guy's actually got some ideas, and like it turns out he really doesn't.
See, I think he probably did, and the canon people like shot them down.
We don't know. I guess we'll find out if we ever watched the 70s version.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked Connery's costume as the Green Knight.
I like the whole thing of like anyone that's magic is sparkly.
Yeah, that's fine.
and like they sort of did that with Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah.
But then they just kind of drop her.
They completely drop her, which doesn't make sense if you've actually read the poem. It's not a terrible looking film. Again, they filmed all in castles, etc. The armor that they use is all from like the Royal Shakespeare Company and actual like movie houses and stuff. And
they even mention that when he's fighting the Black Knight.
Yeah.
And he steps on his glove and it smashes. The king's armor is just show armor or something.
Right. Yeah.
And
like the film knows enough to kind of say like the shiny armor he goes out in is basically tinfoil, and the other armor is real iron. I mean, it's not. I mean, whatever. Yeah. But the armor that they use throughout the film doesn't look any worse than what you see in Excalibur, and it's specifically modeled to remind you of Excalibur.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad looking film. You know what is bad looking? The wig.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so by the way, like Sir Gawain has the worst. You brought up He-Man, and it's like, imagine Prince Adam's hair only a lot more of it.
Yeah.
Just sitting on a head. It looks awful.
And the first shot is just his bare chest and then like that hair.
Yep.
And
I saw that. I'm just like, oh, please don't be Sir Gawain. And it is.
yeah.
It sure is. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nothing against him or like him physically, but like the hair is just yikes.
So you didn't like the muscles? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I really wasn't thinking about the muscles this time.
Nice.
His cheekbones, on the other hand, holy mackerel. Those are not real, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Sean Connery is good. Everyone else, is kind of wasted. I mean, Peter Cushing is in this, and he's in it a little bit. And when he's on the screen, he's great. He's fun. He's chewing in the right ways, chewing the scenery. But there's not a whole lot of him, and it's all part of the plots that really shouldn't even be in the film. So, it's a little annoying. He's in it. John Rhys Davies kind of stomps his way through as an evil lord who...
There are actually at least 3 Raiders...
Oh, 3 Indiana Jones
characters.
Actors.
Actors, yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. You're right. There are, because... So we have Sean Connery, who, of course, ends up being, Indiana Jones' dad. We have John Rhys Davies, who is Sulla. But then we also have... Yeah. But then we all doing brown face, yeah, because he is a Welshman. And we have
Ronald Lacey.
Thank you, I forgot his name. Ronald Lacey, who in Raiders of the Lost Ark is old Melty Face, Tote, the Nazi
Gestapo guy,
all dressed in black, and he is a villainous little toad in this.
Yeah.
And which is fine. Here's the thing. He's absolutely fine in the role. He's a good choice for what he's supposed to be doing. It's just that it all feels like it's distracting from the story that I was expecting to see told.
It takes Gawain and the Green Knight and as the kind of framing device. It starts with it, ends with it, and then it just chucks in like a USA by the numbers movie in the middle of it.
Yeah, and that is exactly what is annoying about it. And it's a shame because I don't think it's not a terrible movie in that God knows I've seen worse. But it's a frustrating movie. It's not a great movie because it does get tedious after a while. There are attempts at humor and it's fine. It's not like it doesn't work at all, but the whole time it's like, I don't think you understood your source material, which is really frustrating.
Well, see, because it's made by the Canon Group, I assume the same thing happened as happened with the Apple, in which whoever wrote it, I guess Weeks, had a vision, and then those two guys...
monkeyed with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'd be curious to see what the 1970s version was like. Because I think this guy Weeks, he started out... Like, his first movie is a Hammer film, I think.
Right.
And you can kind of feel that in this. We haven't seen the 1970s version, but apparently that version, he incorporates parts of not just Sir Gawain the Green Knight, but Yvain, the Knight with the Lion, which is one of Critian's poems. And he also brings in, I think, some of the story of Sir Gareth from the Morte d'Arthur. So it's not like Weeks doesn't know Arthurian material. And in fact, the entire subplot that he throws into this is like the story of Leonessa, which is the lost city, the lost land at the end of Cornwall that sunk beneath the waves. That was the homeland of Tristan from Tristan and Isolde. And so, like, that is drawing on authentic medieval literature, but has nothing whatever to do with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And in a way that it just, again, when you finally get to the Green Chapel, it has nothing to do with the poem. It's so frustrating. So, because here's what happens in the poem. If you haven't read it, the Green Knight comes in on, Christmas and challenges somebody in Arthur's court to chop off his head. Give me a blow and I'll give you a blow in return. And so the idea is Gawain steps forward, chops off his head, thinking, yeah, that's the end of it. What's he going to do? Get up and, hit me? He's dead. Well, of course, what he does is he gets up, picks up his head and says, you have to come and see me in a year at the Green Chapel. And so then a year goes by of Gawain getting ready to go off and do the right thing and honor his debt to the Green Knight. Towards the end of the year, he finally goes out and finds lands near the Green Chapel. and spends his time at the home of Sir Bertilac, who is like a local lord. And Bertilac essentially takes him to his home, and you're like my best friend now, and I'm here to help you, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Bertilac's wife is all over Gawain and is constantly trying to get him to sleep with her. So it's a chastity test. The whole time it's like, I'm very loyal to Bertilac, and he is helping me, and he wants to help me with the Green Knight situation, etc. Now, meanwhile, his wife is trying to sleep with me, and if I sleep with her, which I really want to do, I am betraying the trust of Bertilac, and this is losing his honor. And the thing is, in the poem, he lets it get really, really far, to the point where she gives him a green sash to protect him against any sort of damage that could come to him when he meets the Green Knight. So the idea is he is good.
Is there a magic ring, by the way?
No, that's the thing. That not in this. Now, rings that turn you invisible. That's medieval literature, and that gets into like things like the Nibelungenlied and whatnot. But that's like more of a Norse and Germanic literature, not than Celtic, from what I remember. So he takes the green sash, and taking the green sash and wearing it is deceitful against the Green Knight, because he is going up there with a magical object to keep himself from actually receiving the blow that he deserves. And it's also, he gets it because he's fooling around with this guy's wife behind the guy's back. You know, the end of the poem is he does go to face his fate, and he only gets a nick on the neck. It all comes out. He explains, okay, well, I had the green belt this whole time. And the Green Knight says, right, I know, because I'm actually Sir Bertilac, and I've been enchanted by Morgan Le Fay to do all of this, and you're finally coming clean. And so you get to ride home now, because you did go and let me go to chop off your head, but you kind of have to be honest about how you got to this point.
Okay, now say that in Old English.
Okay, but so like the whole poem is sort of a meditation on honesty and loyalty and owning up to your own failures, right? Because then the end of the poem is he goes back to Arthur's court, and he has to explain, yeah, I survived, but here's how. And everyone kind of goes, hey, look, we're all human, and the important thing is you came forward and you survived, etc. At least that's one interpretation of the poem and its ending. Okay. Now, Lowry's version grapples with this a lot.
Although he does kind of change some things.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Lowry's version changes all sorts of things, but at least...
Including the ending a bit.
Including the ending, but at least he's grappling with the themes of the poem.
Yeah.
This doesn't...
You want grappling.
I want grappling. This is, here's a whole bunch of vignettes, and then we get to the scene with the Green Knight, which we do finally get to that, because, he does go to Bertilac eventually after a whole bunch of stuff. There's this entire subplot with the land of Lyonesse and the woman who lives there, and, he ends up killing the guardian of the place, and then so he's got to be, like, there's this entire dumb plot.
Well, she eventually becomes the lady.
Yeah, I know, which is fine, and they could have done more with that, but they didn't. He has to escape from Lyonesse in order to continue with his quest, and then he comes across this other castle, which is ruled by John Rhys Davies, with his son being played by
Lacey. Ronald Lacey.
Ronald Lacey, and their seneschal, which is like a prime minister, I guess in this case, is played by Peter Cushing. And so he ends up imprisoned in this whole place now. And of course, she's being held captive there, and he has to go and rescue her, and he fails. And then he goes off finally to Bertilac's castle, where the lady is played again by the same actress. Now that's interesting. Okay, that's actually setting up something cool and interesting and thematic, but they don't do much with it, because when he finally does get to Bertilac's castle, yes, she gives him the green sash, but there's no scene, there's the one scene in the bedroom, but they don't really do much with it. They don't make it anywhere near as sexual as it is in the poem.
Right.
So you don't get the sense of he's potentially betraying Bertilac, which is crucial to the poem and to how he gets the green sash. So it's just frustrating, because it's just a bunch of vignettes, and the vignettes themselves would be fine, except that he's not grappling with the meaning of the text.
Well, as Golan and Globus, I say more battles and more babes. And a joking friar.
Yeah.
A pickpocket friar.
Which is fine.
That was fun.
It is fun. And the thing is, everything that he's throwing into this movie is perfectly fine and actually is perfectly medieval. Questionable friar who is a thief and an outlaw and stuff. Like, that comes right out of medieval English tradition. That's Friar Tuck. That's fine. All of the weird adventures that Gawain goes on is actually fine. That is very much what a lot of medieval texts are like. A lot of those romances are, and then this weird thing happens, and then this weird thing happens. I mean, if you ever go and read any of them, it is not dissimilar to the film in that, yes, this thing happens and this weird thing happens and then this weird thing happens. But usually, if it's a really good poet, he is able to thread the meaning throughout so that by the time you get to the end of the poem, it all kind of comes together. Maybe it doesn't always work, and some stuff is more episodic than others, but usually they don't entirely lose sight of when the poem actually has a meaning and it's not just a series of adventures. Sometimes it is just a series of adventures, and that's fine. That's fun. But Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is not that kind of a poem. Okay? And so I don't know how bad this movie is or how good this movie is, because the whole time I was frustrated. As I was watching this, I just kept thinking about The Princess Bride. Mm-hmm. Because The Princess Bride has a bunch of things that happen, right?
Right.
But they're all things that happen in service to getting Wesley and Buttercup together in the end.
Right.
Right? And that's that's not necessarily the meaning of The Princess Bride, because The Princess Bride is a multi-layered text, and, you're getting into the film versus the book. You also have a great scriptwriter behind it who also wrote the book. I mean, William Goldman and stuff, But the thing about the Princess Bride is, one, and in those days, Rob Reiner was a good director. Okay. 2, William Goldman wrote the book. He also wrote the screenplay, and he was a great screenwriter. Weeks wrote the script for this, and, there's some okay parts in it, but it doesn't sparkle in the way that The Princess Bride does. Okay. It's not metatextual the way The Princess Bride is, but it doesn't know what its focus is supposed to be, I think, because he kind of tries to make the film about Gawain understanding love and loss through the person of the Lady of Leonessa, right? Because then the end of the film is he goes to get his head chopped off by the Green Knight, and the Green Knight does not succeed because he's got the green sash.
But he also has a get out of jail free card where there's a riddle, I guess, to solve.
Yeah.
And the movie is supposedly about him trying to solve this riddle. If he solves the riddle, which is where life is emptiness, gladness, where life is darkness, fire, where life is golden, sorrow, where life is lost, wisdom.
Right.
And if he solves that, then he is then he can go his merry way.
Right. The Green Knight won't chop his head off.
And they try to make it that, like, oh, he figures it out by the end because all his adventures equal that.
Right.
And,
like, first of all, the poem doesn't need your extra riddle. That's number one. Number two, obviously the idea is that he is supposedly should be able to answer the riddle because he falls in love with this woman and keeps losing her in different ways. But we never actually see him understand the riddle.
Well, he does look puzzled and looks at the camera sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, but then the end of the film is like he goes and he finds her again for the final time, and she's just like, yeah, I gotta leave now, and turns into a bird and flies away.
I was also under a year-long enchantment.
Yeah.
And then she turns into a bird.
It just flies away. And so here's the thing. A woman who then has to turn into a bird, fly away, and you never get to see her again, that's fine. That works. I mean, look, that's Swan Lake. Okay? That's a lot of stories. Like that is the story of Etain from the Wooing of Etain, which is an Irish story. You know, there are a lot of texts that he could be pulling from, and that would be fine, but it's just not necessary. And, you know, the film does not let you kind of get set up for that kind of an ending. You know, it kind of comes out of nowhere. So that's some of my many problems. There's almost no Morgan Le Fay in this. The whole point in the poem is that Morgan Le Fay was the instigator of the entire event. And her reasonings are a subject of a lot of scholarly debate. I've got several monographs and essay collections sitting on the shelf that I am looking at, including Morgan Le Fay, Shapeshifter, The Myth of Morgan Le Fay, the Norton anthology version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I've got a whole bunch. Look, I have read this poem, right? I've got a bunch of books about it, right? They bring up Morgan Le Fay once in this movie, and the whole point is that she's just interfering in the Green Knight's game. They have the Green Knight being the instigator the whole time, and he's not. That the whole point is that he is under her enchantment.
He turns her into a frog, I think.
Which is a fun, goofy-looking frog. I enjoy the puppet, but it just doesn't. It's like he doesn't understand the poem at all, and it's so frustrating. He's not even trying to really grapple with what the poem is about. Ugh.
The thing is, there's lots of things that work in this film that you wouldn't expect to work. For one thing, to me, it looks like a Hammer horror film. Like, it was filmed on the cheap, but it still looked really good somehow.
Yes, yeah. Everybody's walking around like you're in a Pre-Raphaelite painting. It actually, it does look good.
Yeah, like the very first scene when the Green Knight burst into the room. Like we were saying, this looks like Time Bandits.
Yeah.
There's Sean Connery.
Yeah, there's something about the production values of it that does remind me a bit of Time Bandits.
Yeah. The first 20 minutes are good.
Yeah.
It's that. And then there's some like fun magic stuff. For some reason, he's trying to shoot a unicorn.
Yeah. Because he's hungry.
He's like, that's got to be good meat because it's magic meat.
It's like the total jock way of thinking about like unicorns. Like, I bet that tastes really good. It's like, no, because he's got a squire with him. It's just like, are you nuts? That's a unicorn.
But this is our introduction to who Gawain is.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's just a jock meathead. And that's kind of fun, though.
That's fine. That actually works. Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, Miles O'Keefe isn't bad in this.
Yeah. Because as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, well, now I see why this movie is not good. But he's not the problem. The problem is that it just...
I don't know.
It just loses it.
Yeah, it just loses its spark about 20 minutes in.
Like if it was not the Green Knight and it was just fantasy movie.
Yeah.
Like it'd still be like it would
still drag at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it just because the same plot kind of keeps coming. He goes to a castle and then he fights his way out of things. He goes to the castle. He fights his way out of things and. There's nothing else to it, really.
Yeah.
Like, once the magic stops, because in the beginning, there's all kinds of weird magic things going on, but once that stops, it's like,
yeah.
I don't really care what's going on.
It's hard for your mind not to wander at certain points, and that's the problem. But here's the thing, at least because of when it was filmed, as you said, there isn't any CGI in it.
Yeah.
So that I think it looks better than a lot of movies coming out now that overuses CGI.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're watching guys actually like bash each other with, swords. Although that one sword was looking pretty rubbery, I gotta say. Yeah.
Yeah.
At some point, he unsheaths his, sort of. What is this called again?
I don't know.
Yeah, the sword of valor, I guess. Yeah, he unsheathes that sword, and that sword wiggles.
It wiggles all over the place.
Yeah. But so you've got these guys actually beating each other up, and for that reason alone, and they're in actual fields with actual sunlight on them, that it looks better than a lot of movies coming out these days.
Yeah, but they just could have cut a lot of it.
They could have cut so much of it.
And
it's not a long movie. It is 108 minutes maybe, so it's not even like a 2-hour movie.
Yeah. I think it's one castle too long.
Yeah, at least. So
I just can't imagine this poem being translated well in the 80s.
No, it's not. It's not exactly the most self-reflective time.
I feel like if anything could work is if it was done as an animated short in the 70s. I could see that working.
Oh my God, imagine Ralph Bakshi's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Just like 30 minutes.
I want to see that. I will say, I will say a couple things. One, again, it's a weird collection of actors. Like King Arthur is played by Trevor Howard, who is a great British actor. I mean, he's in like Brief Encounter and The Third Man. Again, Peter Cushing is in this. Sean Connery, again, is great as the Green Knight.
The thing is, every actor is good.
Yes.
Like they all are pretty good at what they do.
Yeah.
Like Lacey is a toad. That's his job description.
Yeah.
And apparently he plays the same character in the 73 film. So
does he really? Okay. Yeah.
So
wait,
so we're gonna see more of Oswald.
Oh, see now, do I really want to subject myself to the 73
Of course
version?
you do.
Yeah, I know, but we won't do it for the podcast. Don't worry, I'll save you people.
I'm hearing box office gold.
I do wonder how The Green Knight's doing. I really liked it. The film that came out this year. I really enjoyed it.
And Dev Patel is great.
Oh my God, he's great in several ways.
I just feel like he, as a modern actor, like he kind of, I don't know, you could do things with his character that you couldn't do in the 80s.
You could. It would be a different Gawain, but it works. And that, his Gawain is a feckless guy who hasn't had to prove himself yet, and the whole movie is his mother kickstarting him into adulthood. At least, again, Lowry's film was just trying to grapple with the poem and some of the potential meanings in it, and this movie just doesn't do that.
I'm sorry.
Yep. All right, well, that was Sword of the Valiant, The Legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter. We are maryvsmovies@gmail.com. Please write to us with any comments, questions, suggestions, complaints. We are always happy to hear from the audience. Next week, it is the end of summer, and we decide to watch a movie that is apparently very, very hot. Do you remember what we're going to watch?
It's just Three Amigos.
It is Three Amigos.
Oh, good.
Yay. Yeah. Okay. So back to what I'm assuming are fun movies.
Yeah.
Not that this wasn't fun, but yes, I've never seen the Three Amigos, and I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been on kind of a Martin Short kick since Charles Grodin died, and we saw Clifford. And,
yep. But anyway, so we're going to watch the Three Amigos, and I am very much looking forward to that. And so until next time.
You have my axe.
Fair enough.
It's like